supermen.
And now I'm going to take you a little further westward, agriculturally speaking, to where the sweet smell of freshly mown grass pervades our hairy nostrils.
The sweet smell of freshly mown grass pervades our hairy nostrils. That could only mean one thing. Good evening, Jake. How are you?
I'm doing good, Jared. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. We are going to get into Genesis's first top 30 hit tonight. I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe from 1973, Selling England by the Pound. That was a little clip from a live performance of this song. Peter Gabriel doing his little monologues at the beginning of virtually every song by this point in their career. And Jake, I think one thing that stands out to me about this song is the main character's name is Jacob.
Yeah, that's right. And he's lazy.
Hey, you're not lazy.
No.
You're not lazy. Here you are recording all these podcasts with me. So
Right.
I think we're on number 12 now.
Yeah.
Speaking of, if you're trying to listen to us on Spotify, you probably only have a few days. They keep kicking us off for copyright, but there are 12 episodes of Mild Mannered Supermen out there. We're doing quite well on Apple Podcast, where all 12 remain live. But you can also check us out on YouTube or anywhere across the board. But if you're listening on Spotify, the odds are likely this will be taken down in a couple days. But check us out wherever you can.
That's right. And write your senator or congressman and have them
yes.
do something about this.
Protest.
That's right.
All right. So I'm eager to get your thoughts on their first top 30 hit.
Yeah, this is a fun little song. And, a couple of little tricks going on here, and very much in keeping with the spirit of the album, right? We talked in our last episode about how Genesis had been kind of criticized in the run-up to the release of this album for, I guess, for lack of a better sense, really losing touch with their British audience, right? The Brits were very concerned, I think, that Genesis was, they're touring, they're very popular in Italy, right? But they're ultimately trying to break out in America, and they've spent a lot of time touring in America. They've been away from home, and the people of England, Central England, miss them, right? And so you get a lot of press, and the British are brutal when it comes to tabloids, right? So, and not even extending into tabloid, just kind of saying that any kind of rumor that gets started can spin up very, very quickly. Long story short, Genesis is trying to respond to this sentiment, right? They feel like, hey, we're no less English than we ever were. We're just a rock band, and we're trying to make our way. And so this album is very much a response to that, right? I think a lot of people feel this is a quintessentially English progressive rock album, and this song in particular is representative of that. And really, I think this one screams the theme of the album, right? Genesis is trying to make an English album, but what is England in 1973, 1974? It's a country coming to grips with itself, right? They have this great ancient history and these long-standing traditions, and so much so that the entirety of kind of social structure is built around these traditions, the peerage and whatnot. Then you have kind of the rock and roll mindset, right? The whole I just want to hang out and smoke some dope and listen to music and dance, right, and have a good time. And that's really what this song is about. It's about a young man named Jacob who is very, very happy with his life as a grass cutter. He's a groundskeeper, and he really wants nothing more than that.
Right.
And the mention, or the kind of the pressure or antagonist in the song is the traditional English lifestyle, the idea that one should try and better themselves, that, you can't be content as a grass cutter. You have to become something better than that. And kind of where that is in the society of early 70s England is what this song is all about.
What about it musically do you think is, why did it break through to the extent that, it broke through? Top 30, put them on the map a bit.
Yeah, this one is really simple. It's a very simple song. It's set in a major key. It has exclusive major key tonality, right? So it doesn't dip into any of the modal or much of the modal stuff that Tony Banks is kind of known for. What really stands out to me, Jared, is that you can tell the difference if you listen hard enough between a song that's written on keyboards versus a song that's written on guitar. And this is a song written on guitar, right? Guitar songs have a tendency to follow these blocky kind of chord progressions or simple riffs. And Tony Banks, we know he has a doctorate in playing anything but traditional chord progressions. So, the distinction here, what I really hear, is that this is kind of a Steve Hackett, Mike Rutherford production, not so much a Tony Banks one. The other side of it is when you think about the lyrics, particularly Peter Gabriel's lyrics, these come across as fairly straightforward, right? And there's something tricky about that in my mind. I tend to not trust Peter's face value, meaning. So when you cross-reference that with the timbre of the song, right? The feeling that is being presented. What you get from this is a very simple major key tonality. So for once, really, we have perfect alignment between the music of the song, right? This kind of perky, happy vibe, and the lyrics, which describe just a person who's content and everything else be damned, right? I mean, it's not that he's not aware of these things. He's not a kind of the blissful fool. He knows. People have been telling him his whole life. He just could care less, and I think that that's awesome, right? And you hear that in the music and the lyrics. So kind of a nice little follow up to the intro song from this album, right, which is significantly heavier, much denser. But this gets straight to, I think, the mindset of the early 20s, male British population that was listening to Genesis, right? This is a song to Genesis fans that, hey, we're educated, but this is a new world, and, you don't necessarily have to follow the traditions.
Yeah, I mean, and so much in rock and roll, we talked about this a little last week, is about rebellion. And the rebellion here is going your own way, doing your own thing, not worrying about what everybody else thinks. And it's almost like the lackadaisical nature of how Jacob likes to spend his days is the rebellion. And I just find that to be a fun take on the song.
Yeah, he's rebelling just by being who he is, not a rebel, right? In the traditional sense. And I think that's the catch. That's the what Peter was trying to get at here, or the, ironic statement, or however, however you want to phrase that, that he was trying to make. It's the secret is in being happy just with who you are. And that's incredibly difficult to do. And really hard to do in this English society at the time.
I think musically, it's also easy to sing along to. And you haven't had many Genesis songs that have been easy to sing along to and tap your toe to. So this one likely got audiences moving a little bit different than some of the other songs in their repertoire at that point. Phil Collins, in his autobiography, tells a great story of this song. He talks about their influence from the Beatles a great deal. Like, they got the sitar and they started playing with that, and then he came in and started kind of tapping out a little bit of a Beatles beat. And that's how that intro got started. And Peter came in a little bit later with his lyrics. But ultimately, when this song hit the top 30, everybody would think that Genesis, here comes Genesis. They're going to be on top of the pops, kind of the weekly thing to sit down and watch if you were into music at this time in England. And they actually got an offer to go on top of the pops, and they declined. And the reasons that he talks about them declining were fascinating to me. One, they really felt at this time that they were a stage performing act, and this song did not lend itself when first released to a real theatrical stage show. Two, they thought their fans would think they were selling out if they went on top of the pops. Mm-hmm. And so to think about that this early in their career, especially like you and I have the benefit of knowing what Genesis ultimately became in the 80s and beyond, is pretty fascinating to know that they were really trying to move cautiously around how their fans were thinking about them. And then third, one of the key influences that you would think would make them jump directly on that show and get as much publicity as possible is that right around this time, they were in massive debt, to the tune of 1.5 million pounds.
Yeah.
So they were broke. And the bookkeeping had just been really sloppy by a manager who was kind of the same age as Phil Collins, like 19 when they came out with Nursery Crime. So just a lot happening in the world of Genesis at this time. But the fact that they turned down that invitation for Top of the Pops was just really fascinating to me.
Yeah, and to me that kind of speaks to the mindset of these guys, right? They're clearly pretty smart. You're right about the debt. It's a difficult thing. This is a group that has a big stage show, right?
Yeah,
they put a lot of time and effort into that production, and those sorts of things are expensive. They're also flying around the world, right? I mean, they're at this point they're touring really extensively in Europe, particularly in the Mediterranean area, in Italy, and of course flying to the U.S. It's not cheap, and taking all of the gear and Tony Banks's Hammond organ and those sorts of things are what really rack up the expenses for a band. You want your band van to be as economical as possible, and if you have to add a trailer, right, just to haul around a Hammond organ, it becomes all the more expensive. And these guys, they're eating those costs, right? They are a business as such, and it's taken its toll. You're absolutely right, and it's not going to get any better. This album isn't necessarily going to fix things.
And those returns weren't always there either. I mean, their first two shows in the U.S., the first one was in Boston, and it was booked on a college campus at lunchtime. And the students were just much more interested in studying and eating than they were in listening to Genesis. So that one really stuck with them as an issue. And then they immediately went to New York, and lo and behold, the Hammond and the Mellotron weren't wired for the power amperage in the US. So the tempo and the meter and everything was off with those. And while they got through a show and they got good reviews on that show, Phil Collins says in his book that, even to this day, if they talk about that first New York show, they just get furious internally with how awful that performance was because of things that were generally out of their control. Mm-hmm. They were vibing on stage, but their introduction to the U.S. around this time was, less than stellar, if you will.
And to be honest, U.S. media is no easier than the British media. Here's a fun little one. I found an old copy of a Richmond newspaper from 1972 or 73, maybe right around the same time. It's a review of a concert that happened in downtown Richmond. The band Yes performed, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Yes performed on Broad Street in Richmond. It's kind of nuts. Their opening band was a little known act, kind of this country rock band from California called the Eagles. And the paper just, brutalized the Eagles. These guys, nobody knows who they are. They're hipsters. They're bringing this like weird country thing. Yes was amazing. But I don't think these Eagle guys are ever going to wind up being something. So,
That's awesome.
It's not easy if you're not known. And they're probably facing quite a bit of that as well, right? They've had some stuff out, and certainly there's a rumbling in the underground about about these guys, but commercial success is pretty far off. And so then we have this song, right, which is quintessentially English. The band for a long time avoided actually recording this song. I mean, it was out there before Foxtrot, right, as a kind of a completed piece or nearly completed. The complaint, and this one always makes me kind of chuckle, is that it sounded too much like a Beatles song, right? So I do appreciate that they kind of leaned into that a little bit, because there's no way to make a song sound more like a Beatles song. Add a sitar right to it.
Yeah.
And kind of all the vibey major key stuff that goes on.
Well, and it's a duet, right? I mean, it's a Gabriel Collins duet throughout.
Right. Yeah. So it's got all of those that feeling. But also interestingly, that Genesis wasn't, adverse to writing for the singles market, for lack of a better term. They had a couple of songs prior to this one that were written as intentional singles, right? Non-album singles, which was very strange for a English prog rock band, right? Not too many of them did that. So they're not adverse, nor are they strangers to the kind of this singles format. And by that I mean it's a short song, it's poppy, it's written for radio play. And even when I say short, it's a minute longer than a long song by 1973 pop radio standards, right?
Correct.
So it's
short for Genesis.
Conservatively short for Genesis. But it's just within that play it on the radio length. Again, it's major. It's got a nice vibe to it. And the groove that Mike Rutherford lays down is just all about some mid-70s, kind of radio, cruising radio kind of vibe. So I love it. Anyway,
well, we're gonna listen to it. We're gonna actually do a first here on Mild Mannered Supermen. We're gonna listen to the live version. I just love this version. I think it's Gabriel's playfulness is on full display here. This is a little bit later than the actual recording of the song. Gabriel had figured out exactly how he wanted to portray Jacob on stage. He wears a little pointy hat. He will put some long pieces of hay between his teeth and mime mowing the lawn on stage as the intro kicks in. And as I mentioned, just a few things to listen for here is that, from behind his the safety of his drum kit and sitting on his stool where he preferred to be, you have a full duet here with Collins and Gabriel. To your point, just a really great kind of driving, playful beat from Rutherford, and Hackett is not lost on this one, and clearly neither is Banks. So let's hear it. The little bit here at the beginning is the band getting warmed up and Gabriel doing his lawnmower activity. A lot of these intros, Jake, were because the band had to tune instruments between songs, and Gabriel just got into this rhythm of telling stories and acting out things as the band was getting ready to go from one song to the next.
Interesting.
I just love the personality coming up here as he assumes control of the Jacob character.
It's 1 o'clock and time for lunch. Pum-dee-dum-dee-dum. When the sun beats down and I lie on the bench, I can always hear them talk.
That drum fill sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? Isn't that just a classic Phil Collins drum fill?
You can't miss him. And of note, that's not an actual sitar. That's, of course, Steve Hackett playing an electric guitar through so much effect driven, so many effects that it sounds like a sitar. Something they clearly perfected in the studio.
Right. His voice is a little choppy there because he's doing a little jig on stage. That's basically a full body gyration, so it's hard to keep your voice perfectly tuned at that time.
I like that reference to the fire escape trade. That's one we should, going back to. Get them out by Friday, right? It's a very English, common English thing. It's a trade, but because there's so many skyscrapers going up, fire escapes need to
interesting
go up as well. So it's a popular trade for people in England at that point.
Well, and in some ways, this parallels what these guys were hearing from probably their family and friends. Like, why don't you stop with this musical stuff and get a real job?
Right.
It was actually right around this time that Phil Collins' father passed away, and he's always wondered whether his father realized that he was going to make it in the music industry or not.
He was just wasting his time, right?
Right.
The sun beats down and I lie on the bench. I can always hear them talk. Me, I'm just a lawnmower. You can tell me by the way I walk.
Here he goes again. He's got the straw back in his mouth, and he's just miming, making beautiful rows in the grass back and forth on the stage. I mean, it's like, it's so not rock and roll that it makes it rock and roll.
Well, and beyond that, right, you have this open section here in this band that's known for its massive soloing, and you have hardly any soloing. And then you have the flute, right? The little flute comes in.
Right.
So just, I think the restraint of Banks and Hackett here are noteworthy.
Yeah, you could have stretched this out to 12 minutes easy, right?
Absolutely. There's, of course, the lawnmower reference, the choppy, and then the sound, of course, the lawnmower.
Yeah, that's really why I wanted to play the live version. Is just, I think I think the personality of the song comes through a little bit more, and you can see how it evolved in the stage show.
Yeah, the lawnmower sound that they produce in the studio version of this song is so obscure. It's very Pink Floyd-y, right? In terms of a lead-in kind of sound, and this live version just makes it kind of crystal clear. This is the imagery that we're gunning for. But I still, to me, it's such a nice juxtaposition to the studio version, right? Because the studio version is more psychedelic in the sense that it kind of leaves some of these things open to your imagination. And
yeah,
I think that's a big part of what Genesis is all about.
Yeah, again, if I could just make a time machine and go back and see some of these shows, like just to think about how they would go from one song to the next, and every song took on its own little stage performance and its own introduction, its own set of costumes from Gabriel. To think about going from the bat suit in Watcher to the flower in Willow Farm to the Apocalypse Man in Apocalypse in 9/8 to Jacob, the lawnmower guy. It's just all in the same show. It's just it would be pretty mind blowing to sit in that audience and think, man, this is pretty fun stuff.
Just how cool would that have been? And, we'd love to hear from anyone out there who actually did see any of these shows. You've got to be out there. Let us know. What was the experience like?
Yeah, I'm stuck. I'm just stuck on having to watch them all on YouTube.
Yeah.
So, but thank you to whoever chose to record these things, because it's pretty fun to go back and watch them.
It's neat stuff. The idea that it's written to be a commercial single, I think, first of all, I think that that's true. I do think that they wrote this song with that in mind, or it was produced with that in mind. But then beyond that, it hit a nerve with an audience, that was listening to Genesis at that time. You fast forward to the next album, that you would kind of expect the next album would be all I Know What I Like in Your Wardrobe like songs, right? It's completely the opposite of that. It's let's take that and make something completely different. So that just, I think it speaks to the fortitude of this band.
Well, it took them until 1985 to write that album. The one that's just packed with hit after hit after hit. After hit.
Absolutely.
But it was certainly a formula to them that, I really think the driving force of wanting to write hits was really Tony, and probably to a large degree Mike. But at the same time, there was they had to keep up with the appearances of the time, and their appearance was Peter. It was what he chose to do on stage. It was what and by the way, he never told them what his outfits, what his costumes were going to be. He never put it up to a band vote. He felt very strongly that that should be that in matters of theatrics, you cannot put these things up for a debate. It is art, and it's how he sees it, and he's going to go do it. So even the fox's head and the red dress, we're the band saw it for the first time that the audience saw it. And that story is pretty much the case through, all of the Peter years with the band.
I love that. It's the art of Peter Gabriel is just so much an identity of these early years, right? Just the mindset, and what he's doing out there is incredibly difficult, right? To sing the way he sings, first of all, is one in a million sort of voice. But you tack on his the mindset, right, and the theatrics that go along with that. It's unique, and of course he's competing with other progressive rock bands of the same era that are doing very similar things, right? And a big shout out to my guy Rob Reiner. I'm a huge Spinal Tap fan. Genesis has got to be one of those bands that Spinal Tap is picking on, but not the only one, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
100%.
these big dramatic stage shows with, Stonehenge and the pods that open, and all of that stuff, that it's part of this rock genre. And it's going to lead to the progressive metal movement and kind of all of this stuff. Hey, Jarrett, you're from Richmond. You know the band Guar. It's a bunch of art students from our hometown, and their show is not so much about the music, much more about the stage presence and the costumes and sort of all of those things. So, thank you, Peter Gabriel, for giving us Guar.
I did not have that on my bingo card for our podcast, but I appreciate it. And we are going to leave it there. Listen, we've got a lot to unpack still with Selling England by the Pound. So you can expect a few more episodes on some of the great hits on this album, or at least hits to us, right? We are going to see each other next week. So we will likely not record for a couple weeks, but thanks for paying attention to us and listening. We know you're out there and appreciate it. We hope everybody has a happy holiday season, happy new year. We will see you in a beautiful and uplifting 2026. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you, brother, and I'll see you very soon.
Yeah, looking forward to it. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Mild Mannered Supermen, Mild Mannered Supermen.